The following program is a Town of Colony television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.
Top of the day. I'm Joe Doolittle.
And I'm Kate Detting.
And this is Story by Story.
Celebrating the human spirit.
And Kate, you'd have to say that we've been doing a bit of celebrating and traveling lately, haven't we?
You bet we have.
Boy, I'll tell you.
Sort of together, but not really, but kind of.
But kind of together, and we were at the National Storytelling Summit, which is the National Conference of Storytelling, just about 2 weeks ago. That was
in California.
In California, yeah. And actually, Kate was a finalist in the Story Slam, a big competition for kind of short stories. Yeah, she did really well. She got just out of the money, but it was really fun to watch her up there, I'll tell you. You did good, kid.
Thank you. It was a story I wanted people to hear. It starts with when the news started being filled with stories of hate. I found myself telling stories about the kindness of strangers, because I wanted to plant in people's minds, that's one of the kinds of stories we should be telling now.
That's right.
To give people hope.
And I had fun. I'm part of that healing storytelling.
Mm-hmm. And you had a workshop.
And I did a workshop that brought together a lot of my thoughts about being a hospital chaplain and some stories, and it had a pretty good reception. So I was pleased with that. So
excellent.
Yep. And we got to California, and I would like to say that the storytelling is alive and well. Sometimes when we're here in the Capital District and we're feeling just like we're all there is, it's nice to be around people that are telling wonderful stories all over the place.
Right.
And they're doing great work.
There were 2 people from Alaska that I met, at least one woman from Australia.
Yeah.
A lot of people up and down the Pacific coast, because naturally it was easier for them to get there.
Mm-hmm. And so I was very pleased to have traveled out there and participated and caught up with people that I hadn't seen in a long time.
Exactly.
So,
that's
really good. Well, we're talking about storytelling, and that's one of the things we're going to do. We have a wonderful feature who's going to talk about some wonderful work she's done in Interfaith Stories Circle. We'll give you the what's coming in September for things in storytelling.
You bet.
And Kate, your story was is that the most interesting thing you've been doing in storytelling, or have you been doing other things?
Well, in coming attractions, we'll be talking about some of the other things, the preview of 2 of the exhibits at the Clark Art Institute this summer. But while I was at the conference, I hatched a plan, 2 plans. I spoke with the man who created the moth, George Dawes Green. And I asked him, you've raised the awareness of personal storytelling across the country. Could you help the other forms of storytelling raise the awareness of them? He said, that's just what I'm here for.
Oh, wonderful.
So I'm hoping that will bear fruition. And I've expanded that. I think the National Storytelling Network needs to establish a partnership of some sort with the Moth and StoryCorps, which collects personal, it's also personal stories, usually around historic events or very important events in people's lives. Yeah. And so we're going down. USA Today has a number of series of storytelling throughout the country. And then Appleseed, which is a podcast from the Brigham Young University Radio.
Oh, wonderful.
So I think all of those, if we can cross-market our events, that will make the awareness of storytelling.
Well, I'm percolating something too, which might fit with that. I was in Edinburgh for the Fringe Festival.
Oh, Scotland. There's one of those in New York State, right?
Yeah, there's one right up on Sacandaga Lake. It's not that end. This is a big Edinburgh. My granddaughter was in the festival. Her school got juried in to do one of the performances of A Comedy of Errors by Shakespeare. It was just great. So they got to spend, 10 days in Scotland and did 6 or 7 performances. But I'm walking down the main drag called High Street, and lo and behold, what do I see? Right there on the left is the Scottish Storytelling Centre.
Yes.
And some wise benefactor endowed this program that collects all the Scottish and other Gaelic stories. And they have 3 varying size performance spaces and residencies and things. It was wonderful. We went to one performance there. But it struck me that in a video age, perhaps we don't need that. But, with the exception of the program down in East Tennessee State, we really don't have a concentrated kind of place like that. So I'm thinking on what that might look like and how we might do that, although I realize it's a big leap. But it was really refreshing to meet the people there and to experience it. So.
And I know I collect news articles on the uses of storytelling, and I believe they had a week when they did storytelling on the subway.
Yep, on the trolley. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
That it was like guerrilla storytelling.
Yeah, like guerrilla story.
That I kind of dip into here and there.
Well, I'll come back with a story about kind of my guerrilla storytelling, but I think it would be really good to see if Muriel Horowitz is here.
I know she's here, Joe. She's right there.
Muriel Horowitz, welcome and
Hi,
welcome
it's a pleasure
to
to be
Story by Story. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you.
And you're all the way up here from the tropical city of Poughkeepsie.
That's right.
Well, it's down south.
Yeah,
It is down south.
on the water.
I mean,
It's on the water,
and there may
right.
be a palm tree in somebody's yard. I don't know, but it really is good to have you here
Yes.
Thank you.
you've done some wonderful things down there, and we'll hear more about it. But I guess if no one knew was a storyteller, and I'm always interested in how our guests found their way into storytelling.
Yeah, so I guess I've always been a storyteller. I think I didn't know it though. I mean, I remember when I was little, I used to tell stories to my cousins. I used to walk home from school and imagine these fairy tales and all these things happening. Yeah, that was a little weird. I think if I told anybody about it, they would have
No, you
committed
just started
me.
so young.
But I loved reading stories, and I guess I was also lucky to be a teacher during the time of the whole language movement. And I remember going to a reading conference and hearing Jackie Torrance, and that just blew me away. And
Jackie Torrance being a famous African-American storyteller, telling the old traditional tales with long fingers, with long fingernails. She's one of people honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Storytelling Network, just in case you didn't know who Jackie Torrance was. So you got to see her in real life
I got
person.
to see her in real life person, which
pleasure.
really incredible. Yeah. And I think as a Jewish person, storytelling is kind of in my bones.
Yep.
Our quintessential holiday, the Passover Seder, is a story. It's all about story. So I guess I've always loved story. And then a number of years ago, I had a chance to take a storytelling workshop for teachers. And it was the first time I actually put down the book and just told a story I had read many times. And it was magical. It was just magical. And I guess from there on, I just got really hooked.
Oh, wow. So you put down the book
Yes.
and you told the story.
And you could always be in touch with your listeners. That's their faces give me so much energy when I'm telling stories.
Yes.
And when they nod their heads,
Absolutely.
I go, and sometimes I even say, "You know what I mean."
Right, exactly.
And I could never. I have a. Once I had to tell with my back to the group because I was in a bus and I just didn't want to. I didn't feel comfortable standing up facing my listeners, and that was horrible.
Oh, that would be really hard. I
Time-wise, it was good. We were on the way to an art museum, but for me, it was like at one point I said, "Are you still there? Are you listening?" Oh yes. Okay, good. It's good to know. So yes, putting down the book and looking is just. That's
really is.
what
And
theater
it's-
isn't usually.
And the connection with the audience is they see it differently. You know, I always talk to the kids, especially, as seeing movies in their mind, and they don't do enough of that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's
So yeah, the picture book is nice because it has the pictures, but you get a lot more brain activity if the people are making them the images in their mind.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's part of the magic of stories.
It is.
And my barn will be different than your barn. You know, once there was an old barn. Well, so you tell one story, but everyone kind of hears their
Here's
own.
it a little bit different. They see
Yes.
they see themselves in it. They see each other. Yeah.
Right. They things from their
It's
lives.
things in their lives.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, now, in addition to storytelling in schools, you've been involved in the interfaith storytelling work down in your area. Could you tell
have.
us more about that?
Well, first of all, I have to say that I got started right here because Gert Johnson
Okay.
Right.
invited me to come up and tell Jewish stories for one of the interfaith story circles about 17 years ago. And Lorraine Harton-Gilardi, another wonderful storyteller, she came with me, and I told my stories, and it was just a wonderful evening. And when we got home, Lorraine and I took a walk. It's always dangerous when we take a walk. You never know what's going to happen. But we started talking about, wouldn't it be cool if we could do that here? And we realized in Poughkeepsie there's an interfaith council. And so we approached the director then of the Interfaith Council and said, how would you like to have a story circle? And we've been going for 16 years.
Wow,
And
isn't that
it's amazing. We meet in all different places. So we've been at the Hindu Samaj, we've been at the mosque, we've been at all kinds of Catholic churches, Protestant churches,
Unitarian.
Unitarian, yes, we have a peace concert at the Unitarian Fellowship every year. Synagogues, the Buddhist temple, which is a very exciting place to tell stories. And it's wonderful. We sit around in a circle. The group there's kind of a core, and then there are periphery people that come and go.
And maybe from the congregation
And
where you are.
right. So sometimes people from the congregation who know nothing about storytelling show up, and then they say, "Oh, this is fun. I'll come back next time." And there's nothing like when you know somebody's story. You know, we say if you know somebody's story, you see them in a different light. You can't hate them. You can't be. You see them differently. And so, I mean, we've just had so many amazing experiences. I always think of one, my friend from the Hindu Samaj, who's one of our core storytelling on our steering committee. We were at the mosque one day, and the theme was home, and people were telling all different stories about home. And at the end, when we always have some refreshments, which is another way to share stories, it turned out that she and this younger woman from the mosque were talking, and they realized they both grew up in the exact same town. One was India, one was Pakistan.
Wow.
And it was just an incredible aha, and they could talk about it, and they
Talk
could
about
say, yeah. So
Wow.
there's been some
And one was Hindu and one was Muslim.
absolutely right. So. So there's just wonderful things that come out of it. Friendships, going out of your comfort zone, friendships that you wouldn't have expected to make. and it's opened up all kinds of doors for we have a peace concert every year at the Unitarian Fellowship, and we raise money for a community event. Not a community event, I'm sorry, for a community activity like the Hudson River Housing or the Coming Home Project, which is a project that happens in our community to take care of people who were recently incarcerated. And because of my work in the Interfaith Story Circle, I guess, I got involved with that. And I had a chance to help the people in this Coming Home Project to tell their stories. And that was just so powerful for me, talking about reaching out to a group that you didn't think that you would be able to, that you'd have anything to offer, and that you really would connect with. And I've done this for 3 years now, and it is just amazing work. Makes me really want to do some more prison work, because these people have so much resilience, and so they're just incredible human beings, the ones I've met.
Did you have a chance to speak with Michael McCarty when you were?
I did a little bit, and actually, Michael McCarty is an African American, and he does a lot of work in prisons, and I went over to him after the little panel that we had at this International Story Circle, and I said, so I'm thinking about working in prisons. I said, but do they want to hear from an old white woman? And he said, absolutely. He said, as long as you come with an open heart, they're anxious to tell you their story. And that's what I found with this small group of people, and they weren't all African American, they were a variety.
Right. But Geraldine Buckley, who wasn't at that conference, I don't know if you've ever met her, but she worked for 5 years as a chaplain, the Protestant chaplain in a prison, a high security, maximum security prison in Maryland.
Well, Lanny Peterson, another storyteller, she does some of that work, and she very generously shared some of her experiences and materials with me. So it's really just incredible.
We'll come back to this as an idea, but I had a conversation with Michael and was so impressed by his documentary about his life.
Oh, I have to see that. I missed it.
And then the conversation that brought on. He was a Black Panther in the '60s, and
they had a school breakfast program. I mean, I didn't know much about the Black Panthers, but that was certainly not.
They had
feeding hungry kids. That was a priority for them.
Well, it actually defined the old democratic political machine. If you looked at what they did in terms of the social stuff, but I think in this technological age, we could arrange to have Michael's documentary shown, and then have Michael available to lead the discussion on Skype or some other technology, and you could bring together people in your community who are interested in thinking about how to take that idea on, and it would be a great spread strategy for Michael's ministry, because in a way that's what it is. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I would like to talk about that, because the other thing I'm involved in is this Race Unity Circle, and we've been bringing more and more story into this program, and that would fit perfectly.
It would fit perfectly. So but because of the technology, you don't have to just do it in one place at the same time.
Right, because Michael's way over in California.
Michael's in California, but and even like this video gets a lot of hits on our website when people are looking for whatever the topic is.
Right.
So,
and there are over 100 subscribers actually.
Right.
To this channel.
So that's a really good idea to talk about it off camera, because you guys really aren't that interested until we get it done. And you know what I'd like to hear?
I know what I'd like to hear. I'd like to hear Muriel tell a story, please.
Okay, I'd love to. So one of the things I try to do occasionally is combine folklore and personal story. And with the High Holy Days coming up soon, I decided I wanted to share this one with you. The folktale is from Eastern Europe. Once, a long time ago, somewhere in Eastern Europe, there lived a young shepherd boy. And he he did not know the ways of reading and writing, but he was very wise in the ways of nature, and he loved God. And each day he would bring the sheep up to the pasture, and he was really good at that job. And when they were grazing, he would sit down on a moss-covered rock very often, and he would bring out his reed flute that he had made himself. And he would blow, and the music would be just incredible. Everything from the blade of grass to the angels to God would just smile at the music and the sincerity of his heart. Well, one day, when he was going to be a bar mitzvah, coming to the age of 13, his father decided he should go to the synagogue with him. And he was going to take him to the synagogue of the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, very important person. And Yonatan, for that was his name, Yonatan, was so excited. He had heard the villagers talking, and he knew that this man had such fervor in his prayer, and he couldn't wait to go. And so he dressed in the coarsely handmade suit, and he went walking with his father. But before he left the house, unbeknownst to anybody, he took that reed flute and stuck it in his pocket. And as they walked, they went into the synagogue, and they tried to get as close as they could to the Baal Shem Tov. And the prayers began. And the Baal Shem Tov did, in fact, pray beautifully. And the people around were able to pray and respond in Hebrew. He did not know how to read. He wanted so much to pray in his way to the God he loves so much. Finally, late in the morning, he took his hand and he started to reach into his pocket. His father got wise to what he was doing. He put his hand on his son's hand and said, No, you can't do that. Not here, not in this time, and not in this place. Music is forbidden on this day, this holy day of Yom Kippur. So he sat back and he listened to the people praying, and he wished again that he could pray in his way. Later on in the afternoon, he went and he did the same thing. He tried to get his flute. His father stopped him. And so the prayers went on. You know, on Yom Kippur, prayers go on all day long. It was getting near, the sun was beginning to wane, people were hungry, and it was getting close to the time when the Baal Shem Tov would finish the prayers, blow the final Tekiah Gedolah, the final blast of the shofar, and everybody could go home. But something strange happened. He seemed to lose some of the fervor. The prayer was going really slowly. Everybody was kind of looking around, and all of a sudden, that young boy, Yonatan, he took his hand, he pulled out the flute, and he blew a long, beautiful note. His father was horrified. But amazingly, at that very moment, the Baal Shem Tov seemed to be revived. He prayed with great fervor and quickly finished the service and blew the Tekiah Gedolah, and everybody started to go home. The father started to go to apologize for his son, and he saw the Baal Shem Tov was coming toward him. And he said, I'm sorry. Do not apologize for your son, said the Baal Shem Tov, for it was the sincerity and the heartfelt prayer of his praying in his way that made all of our prayers acceptable to God. And so that's the story. And I always loved that story. But now it has so much more resonance for me. I realized I had to tell it when we celebrated this summer the 50th birthday of my son Jonathan, Yonatan. He was born in 1969 with Down syndrome. And in those days, people told us that, I remember the doctor saying, oh, maybe he'll be toilet trained, maybe he can speak. I don't know, he won't amount to very much. You know, you might think about putting him in an institution. After all, you have a 2-year-old daughter, you have to think about her. Well, let me tell you, the 50 years of John's life have been incredible. He learned to ride a bike just like everybody else. He was in many Special Olympic events. About 20 years ago, he got a coach helped him, and he completed the New York City Marathon, which is something I could never do for sure. And he used to ride his bike to work. He owns his own condominium. He volunteers in many, many different ways. And he lives a full, productive life. But his chauffeur blowing, that really represents him in a special way. So when he was an older teenager, he had an opportunity to study with one of the leaders of our congregation and learn how to blow shofar. We took him down to New York City, to the Lower East Side, and he tried many different shofarot. This is one, so you can see. This is his, actually. It's a ram's horn, and it has a beautiful sound, but I can't blow it. So he wanted to study with this man, and every Sunday he went, and he studied the laws and the rules, and he studied the notes. Now, he does not read or write, so he and I worked out a color code so that he could, with lines and colors, so that he could blow the notes of the shofar. And then one year, he was ready, and he blew the shofar at the family service. And he did a perfect job. Now, it's very important. One of the great commandments of this day is to hear the shofar blowing, so it's very important that you hear it and you hear it correctly. And he did a beautiful job. The next year he did it again, and right afterwards, the head of our youth director, who also worked at Vassar College, came running down to John and said, "John, we need you." The student who was going to blow shofar at the Vassar College service didn't show up. And John said, "Well, I'll go." And he ran over with her. And here, this young boy who could not read or write allowed the students and faculty and families of Vassar College to hear the sound of the shofar. And he's blown it for many places, for people who are homeless, not homeless, homebound, for people in nursing homes. He was once even asked by my friend Reverend Gail Berger to blow at a peace concert, to open up the peace concert in front of at the Buddhist temple, in front of the largest Buddha in the Western world.
There we go.
But for him, the biggest thing was when he was asked to blow the shofar in front of his congregation. And he was asked to blow that Tekiah Gadola, that final blow on Yom Kippur. I held my breath. Everybody else had smiles on their faces, and he blew a loud, clear note that went straight, I'm sure, to the throne of God. And as I looked around, once I took a breath, I saw tears in the eyes of some people, and I saw smiles in the eyes of many more. And Jonathan had the biggest grin ever. And so, that shepherd boy who couldn't read or write, his prayers made all the prayers go up to heaven. And that's the story.
Oh, Muriel, that was beautiful and artful and just wonderful.
Thank you. Coming from you, it feels
you,
good.
I gotta tell you. And you know, what a loving, supportive family you must have been and are for Jonathan. And in other words, that kind of talent doesn't get developed on its own. So congratulations.
And confidence.
Confidence, yeah.
The confidence, yeah. But you know, it takes a village. It was really interesting at his birthday party. There were kids that he had grown up with that came for the party. You know, typical kids, our friends' children. Yeah. And it was so wonderful to see. And that community, that faith community and others really helped him become who he was, who he is.
Who he is. It's just great. And to be able to step in at Vassar, which was not a known place for him, and just take it away.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Right. He was just so confident and so excited. And for many years after that, they would call him back every year and asked if he would do it.
He saved the service.
He did. He really did, because apparently there was nobody else there that knew how to do it.
I once had the opportunity after a concert to ask a question to a woman who had just made her debut in the Metropolitan Opera as Aida, and so I asked her to, what's a time when you were performing that you'll always remember? And thinking, of course, that she would say that the time that her first performance at the Met. And she said, well, I was backstage chewing on a Milky Way, talking to a friend of mine, and the second act finished. I was the understudy for Aida that night, and the stage manager said, you have to go on the third act. The other singer is sick. Ooh. And she said, really? He goes, yes. And she said, I put down my candy bar, I started warming up, and I went on. Wow. So the highlight of her career at that point was saving the opera. And
right.
He was prepared for the one service that day, but
right,
not
and
for
he
the
knew
second
what
service.
notes. But I was a little worried because he had to do a lot of the blowing. There's actually 100 notes during the course of the service, and this was on Rosh Hashanah, not on Yom Kippur. So on Yom Kippur, it's just the one long long note. But on Rosh Hashanah, there are various points, and there are 100 notes that get blown, and they have to be done in a specific order. And we had our little cheat sheet with the color codes, and he just blew us all away. Yeah.
He stirred a memory for me in our church in Schenectady, the First Reformed Church. We have an exchange with Temple Gates of Heaven. It's a Reformed congregation. And when I was a teenager, the rabbi was a fellow by the name of Michael Senses. He was Hungarian and had come out of Hungary just before the Holocaust as a kid. And he was just a wonderful storyteller. We had a pulpit exchange, so he left an imprint. And he played the shofar in service, and he played the shofar a couple of times. My mother is 104, and she's in a nursing home. And I look over across the nursing home fellowship hall, and there is Rabbi Senses. Now, he's infirm, and his daughter's there. But I go over and I introduce myself, and I said First Reformed Church, and I said, I remember you telling him stories, preaching, and playing the shofar. He says, you remember the shofar? Interesting. Everybody remembers the shofar. It was just the way he said it. And he was just old, but still magical in a way. Everybody remembers the stuff. Yeah.
It's true. I don't know if we have time for me to tell a little story.
No, we have to go on to coming attractions.
We'll come back.
Okay.
Okay, so coming attractions in September. First is an event that I'll be giving on Thursday, September 5th at 1 p.m. at the Clifton Park Half Moon Public Library. It will be a preview of 2 of the summer exhibits at the Clark Art Institute in Williamstown, Massachusetts. They'll still have a couple of weeks for one exhibit and then the whole month for another one. One of the exhibits is Renoir, The Body, the Senses, and it's a retrospective of him painting nudes from the first one that was accepted at the Salon in Paris, which was the big place to do your thing in his time and day, to a year before he died in his 80s, plus the people who influenced him, and they have a picture of the first picture he loved at the Louvre. It's a little one, but it's from 1714,
wow.
And they allowed it to be shipped over to Williamstown and exhibited. And so the people that influenced him and the people whom he influenced, including several Picassos. And you would think, Renoir, Picasso? Picasso owned over a half a dozen Renoirs. So, yes, he was very much influenced. So I'll be giving a preview of that exhibit, and if you come, you'll get a handy-dandy little handout that you can take with you with the exhibit with quotes that I have from Renoir. I always find, especially with artists, I want to find out why they were doing their work, what was on their minds. And
So this kind of program is in lieu of doing guerrilla storytelling
Right.
next to a picture.
Right,
So-
right. This is, and then another exhibit they have this summer, a smaller one, is Ida O'Keeffe, Escaping Georgia's Shadow. One of the younger sisters of Georgia O'Keeffe, who didn't go to art school until she was in her 40s, early 40s, and then when she graduated from Columbia University, it was the Depression. And she had a heck of a time finding a job. She moved 13 times in 10 years, filling in for people. Because during the Depression, if you had a good job, you didn't give it up. You might have to take a sabbatical or health issues. So she didn't have the opportunity to develop her art the way Georgia O'Keeffe did with her lover and then husband, Alfred Stieglitz, the photographer and gallery owner, and very influential in the New York art world. So I love both of these exhibits, and if you haven't seen them, or if you have and you want to find out some more information about them, please come to hear my preview. And you also get a handy-dandy little sheet on the Ida O'Keeffe exhibit. So that's the first storytelling event. Then on Sunday, the September 8th, will be the last of the Not Just for Kids storytelling events at Schoharie Crossing in Fort Hunter, New York, just 10-15 minutes west of Amsterdam, New York. And our very own Sandy Schumann will be telling stories that day. Rain or shine, underneath the tent,
Yep.
6 o'clock. Then on the next day, Monday, September 9th, will be the permanent floating,
First Monday's
Tales and
Tales and
Stuff.
Stuff in the Stockade, Schenectady, First Reformed Church. That's on the corner of Church and Union Street, and it'll be in the Mohawk House. And it'll be a cozy room, and there will be lemonade and cookies, and the feature will be Nancy Marie Payne.
Okay, and the topic to be,
The topic will be autumn bliss.
did you just make that up, Joe?
Yes, I did.
Sorry, I shouldn't.
You know me too well.
Yeah. And then, also on September 8th, a little out of order there, I forgot, we have a spinoff from Word Plays at Proctor's in Schenectady up in Salem, New York, which is northwest of Saratoga, almost into Vermont. And it's been there several years. It's in the Fort Salem Theater in their cabaret, formerly the baptismal area. The
Baptist Church.
A small room,
Yeah.
a lovely small room. The topic is hope. And Siri Allison, Betty Cassidy, myself, Margaret French, Marnie Gillard, Rock Kaufman, Nancy Marie Payne, and Susan C. will be telling stories of hope up in Salem. Then, as Muriel mentioned, the Interfaith Story Circle will be meeting on September 12th at the First United Methodist Church of East Greenbush, which is the church where Fran Berger, the featured teller, attends. And she'll be telling stories of endings and beginnings. As the description is, an ending is often a beginning also. The end of the end is the beginning of the next beginning. So those are interesting stories. Then we'll have Hope at Proctor's on Sunday, September 15th at 2 p.m. in the underground, or also known as the Hearst Education Center, or perhaps it had been the bargain basement of the Carl Company when that was there, underneath the box office area, with Some of the people who told up at Salem and others: Siri Allison, Claire Beetlestone, Betty Cassidy, Joe Doolittle, Marnie Gillard, Claire Nolan, Nancy Marie Payne, and Sandy Schumann. So that'll be the debut of our 13th season at Proctor's. Then on Tuesday, September 17th, everyone's still awake here? Yes.
I am.
Yes.
I'm listening attentively.
Right here at the Colony Town Library will be our monthly meeting of Story Circle of the Capital District, where people have a chance to share works in progress and get as much or as little feedback as they desire. 6 to 8 p.m.
And if you're watching and are curious about what happens at a storytelling event, this is a good introduction. So we encourage you to show up, be welcomed, and listen or tell a story.
Yes. Maximum 10 minutes length for stories, and please, no reading of the stories telling. We want you to experience looking into the eyes of your audience. Then on Sunday, September 22nd, up in Saratoga Springs, is the annual Saratoga Native American Festival, organized by the Brew Shacks, in Congress Park, 9:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. And Tom Porter will be giving at least the final blessing.
And Tom Porter is the sachem of the Kanashareke, which is the new Mohawk presence in the Mohawk Valley, about 15 years, just west of Amsterdam on the north side of the Mohawk River. So that whole development is a good story, and Tom is a wonderful, wonderful spirit.
And you can find out more information at their website. I'll put the capital letters so you can actually say it. SaratogaNativeFestival.com. Then, Storytelling Open Mic at Cafe Lena is starting its 2019-2020 series, 4th Tuesday of the month, September to June, except for December because that's Christmas Eve. There's a featured teller who gets about 30 minutes, and then slots for about 8 different tellers before and after the featured teller. Again, 10-minute length on the stories. Please don't read. And the featured teller will be Tim Van Egmond.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, from Western Massachusetts, a multi-talented storyteller, singer, and musician. Well worth the modest fee. And if you're a student, it's free. Seniors, you still have to pay the full $5.
Oh.
New tellers always welcomed.
I have to write Timmy and see if he wants to stay at my house.
Yes, and then just some reminders of our whole season at Proctor's. We'll have 5-word plays and a celebration. And you can see our topics: hope, turning points, kindness, sticky situations, and lemons to lemonade, which is also a little sticky. And then celebration will be on Sunday, November 17th in the GE Theater. Topic: mountains, actual and virtual. If you want stories on demand, go to storycircle@proctors.org and click on YouTube. You can get over 200 stories there. And if you'd like to watch any of our TV shows, you can get them on demand too. Go to storycircle@proctors.org and click on Story by Story.
Wow, I don't know how you can do that, Kate, and not be out of breath. I think that's
I'm just so impressed.
Pretty big portfolio, I must say.
Yes. Not, we don't organize all of these by any means.
Right.
But especially the Native American Festival, I happened to find out about that through various things. But we only have 15 minutes left.
Oh dear.
So, back to Muriel, and maybe, I know you are also interested in storytelling and how that helps learn literacy, and with young children in and out of the classroom. So could you give us just a smidgen of that and then tell the story?
So as a retired teacher, I certainly understand, and as I work with kids, there's every single standard in the language, almost every single standard in the language arts set of standards, and many in the social studies, can be taught through through story. And when it's taught through story, kids get it. And there's such a kids have so much trouble imagizing these days. They have so much trouble picturing things because everything is bombarding them. And when they can actually sit back and hear a story and see face to face and picture that story, there are so many follow-up activities you can do, so much. When they tell their stories, you're valuing them and you're valuing their learning and you're valuing their culture. And I've gotten really interested in doing oral history. I've done a number of residencies where I've helped young kids interview their family members and get their stories, especially their immigrant stories, and then record them, and then they share them, and it's been just wonderful. And it's also, of course, very valuable for any kind of character education. One of my favorite go-to books is Once Upon a Time, Storytelling to Teach Character and Prevent Bullying by Alyssa Perriman. And the story I want to share with you, if I may, is a story that comes from this book. It's a German folktale, and she says it's primarily for young children. But I think in this day and age today, it's a story every one of us needs to hear. So with your permission, I'd like to tell you that one. So I want to just tell you one other thing. I do a lot of volunteering in an inner city school in the city of Poughkeepsie, and there's a large African-American population, but there's also a large Latino community. And so while I'm definitely not bilingual, I try often in my storytelling to interject some Spanish because I think it relates to the kids, and you can see in their faces that recognition that, oh, she knows something about my culture. She respects my culture. She respects me. So I'm going to do that as I tell this story. So había una vez, vivía tres mariposas hermosas. There lived, once upon a time, there lived 3 butterflies. There was one butterfly with big red wings, alas rojas. And there was a medium-sized butterfly with yellow wings, alas amarillas. And there was a little butterfly with little white wings, alas blancas. And the 3 of them were best friends. They lived together in the hollow of a tree, and they flew. They would fly each day over the meadow, over the grass, and into the flower garden. And in that flower garden, there were beautiful flowers of all colors. The mariposas, the butterflies, loved those flowers. They loved to see them, they loved to smell the wonderful scents, and they loved to suck the nectar. One day they were having so much fun, they forgot to look up in the sky. A dark cloud was coming, and it started to rain. The raindrops came onto the wings. The butterflies didn't know what to do. They needed to get out, and they flew over the flower garden and said, please, please shelter us from the storm. Inside your petals, it's nice and warm. And a red tulip opened up its petals and turned to la mariposa roja, the red butterfly, and said, you can come in, you're like me. But your friends, they're different. I don't like different. They may not come in. And that red butterfly just stood right up and said, I am not going where my friends are not welcome. Muchas gracias, pero no gracias, thanks, but no thanks. And she flew away with her friends. Now their wings were getting heavier and heavier as the rain was coming down faster and faster and faster. Who will shelter us from the storm? Inside your petals, it's nice and warm. A yellow tulip opened up its petals, looked around at the 3 mariposas and said, "Yellow one, you can come in, you're like me. But your friends, I don't like different." So she got up and she said, "I will not go where my friends are not welcome. Gracias, pero no gracias. Thank you, but no thanks." And she went on, and now the rain was coming down really hard. Their wings were really, really heavy. They could barely move. And again they said, "Who will shelter us from the storm? Inside your petals, it would be nice and warm." A white lily opened its petals and looked around. "White one, you can come in. I don't like different. You guys have to stay outside." And you know what happened. She said, "I will not go where my friends are not welcome. Gracias, pero no gracias. Thank you, but no thanks." And so they didn't know what they were going to do, and they were barely able to move when they heard a voice from the side, a little clover patch. And from there they heard, "I see. We see that you friends are sticking together. We don't have big flowers to offer you, but if you come to us, you can hide under our flowers until the storm blows over." And so the mariposas, the butterflies, they went under those little flowers, and the sun shone down. It saw how the friends stuck together. It saw how the clover welcomed them all, and the sun pushed that dark cloud away and shone brightly, and the mariposas climbed up the clover, and their wings, the warmth of the sun dried their wings, and the 3 of them flew back to their tree. And from then on, every day they still went out, and they still went to the flowers, and they still flew around and enjoyed the colors and the smells and the nectar. But they always remembered to go visit the clovers. And if you ever want to see butterflies to this day, if you go to patches of clover, you will see those butterflies, and you will remember how the butterflies stuck together and how the clover was kind to them all. And that's the story.
Oh,
Lovely.
great.
So I think we need a little more of that, huh?
I think so.
Yes.
Give me clover.
And I thank Alyssa for permission to telling that story. It's from a German folktale.
Well, it's
And you've added Spanish to it, and you know more than just a little Spanish.
I wish I were bilingual, but you know, I learned something very interesting for any of you who want to tell stories bilingually. I went to a webinar actually from the Healing Story Group with Carrie Ayers.
Carrie Sue
Ayers. And she said that when she tells to a Spanish audience, she uses the English first. And when she tells to an English audience, she uses the Spanish first, so that each group can get that little sense of discomfort about what it's like to be to not understand what's going on. So I think I do that intuitively, but now I do it very purposefully.
oh wow, good for you.
Oh, I tell the squeaky door, and I just happened to say El Gato, the cat, and the other ones. So saying the Spanish word first, and then with the English subtitle second. But that was just happenstance.
Yeah.
Well, I knew enough Spanish, so I knew what a mariposa was, so I knew what the story was about. But after that,
Yeah, and you notice that after a while I could use Mariposa or Butterfly. I didn't need to use
Right.
both because everybody, whether they're Spanish speaking or English speaking,
Yes.
knew the word.
Right. Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Good. Yes. Just lovely. And yes, Alyssa Permain has that collection and another collection,
With-
52 Doorways to the Soul.
To the soul, yes. And
Yes.
they're beautiful.
Very short stories, but very wise stories from all different cultures. And then she has an index in the back by theme. So,
Well, here she has one by theme. She has one by value, and she has it by country. So it's really a lot of things you can get from it.
right, yes, yes. So,
maybe one thing we might do is just to post the Healing Storytelling Alliance
okay,
fall teleconferences. There are 4 that are booked, and we'll post that for you
you're
to see them
seeing
out
it right now as we
And
speak.
those are free. They're at 9 o'clock, usually on a Tuesday night, and they're wonderfully dynamic. And if you're interested, the HSA post all their teleconferences for free on their website, which is also on the line, and you can go there and review the archive and get pointers and hints about a lot of different storytelling topics and techniques. So thank you for bringing up the HSA. I should have thought of it myself, but I didn't.
It's hard being perfect all the time.
I just want to tell you, I've given up being perfect. You knew that though, didn't you?
Well,
Yeah,
we try our best and say I'm sorry when needed. So we have a little less than 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
So, any final words of wisdom from Muriel? Oh,
Connect the story with the literacy teaching and reinforcement for kids, because I love the story, but when you're teaching kids to read, how does that kind of story become a lever or part of the method?
Well, I think this story really is wonderful for character education, but
right.
in terms of teaching them to read, in this day and age, especially in schools that are underperforming, there's such an emphasis on sounding out the words, learning the letters, doing the phonics. You can't read? Well, do more phonics. And meaning and comprehension gets lost. So a story like this has sequencing in it. It has prediction in it. It has comprehension in general. It's got main idea. It's got themes. It's got so many things. And when kids begin to understand the idea of story, when they read, they're not just barking at words anymore. They're actually reading for meaning. Ta-da! And so that to me is a really
So
strong
the story, while it's complex, is more easily understood than the words themselves. That's kind of what you're saying, I think. That they can understand this sequencing and as it all happens, whereas if they were trying to deal with a piece of a sentence, they don't get
Right. Well, more than that, if the concentration is on, I call it barking at words. In other words, if they're working so hard at trying to sound out every word, they have completely lost the sense of why we read, and then they don't want to read. And for those kids who are second language learners, it's even more important that they build that vocabulary, yes, but also building the idea of story. I did a project. We don't have time right now.
we
but
actually
we don't have
30
time.
seconds.
But yes, so I'm not even going to tell you about an article I wrote. But
yes, but maybe it can be put on your website.
sure,
Yes.
that's a great idea.
So go
Kate,
to
thank
her
you.
website. I'm her webmaster. Okay, we have 10 seconds to say thank you for coming. We hope you come again.
Hope to see you at a storytelling program.
And thank you, Muriel, for driving up from Poughkeepsie.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round,